Well, we are in our final episode on our series that we call Breathing Room, where we've been talking about how to get a little bit of breathing room in our lives. And several of you, actually many of you, have been actually letting me know that you've been putting into practice the things that we've been talking about. That you've been clearing out the clutter of our overcrowded and overbusy lives. And this is a great time to do it. It's the start of the new year. And I think all of us really would love to have more breathing room, to have more space to enjoy life, to enjoy God, to be present with our families and with each other. Now, I know a lot of you made the commitment with me to do the 21-day digital detox. And listen, we've got 1 week to go until we're done. And listen, for a lot of you, if you're like me, you know, man, it's liberating, isn't it? To be free from being chained to our devices. Like, my screen time is just amazing now. I started out like 6 hours and 37 minutes a day. And now I'm down to just over an hour a day in screen time. And some of you have told me that you've experienced the same thing, that you've done the digital detox and you feel like your mind is less fragmented, that you can concentrate better, that you've noticed how much extra time you have now because you've stopped swiping and scrolling, that in the morning you reach for your Bible instead of your phone, and you listen to God's text message to you. And some of you have been pairing that extra time in using it to find your eremos, your quiet place. And you've made room for silence and solitude, that you've been able to make room to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. And these are just core disciplines for followers of Jesus. Now, if you are doing the digital detox with me, and listen, I want to challenge you to finish your detox strong. Finish it strong. Because what you're doing is you are planting seeds. It's January, and you are planting seeds that I believe is going to come to a harvest throughout this year. That you're going to see a blessing that comes along with doing this. And so as we get towards the end of the 21-day detox, as your pastor, what I want to ask you to ask yourself is, what are the habits that you've started doing in this 21-day detox that you want to carry forward throughout the year, that you want to make part of your lifestyle, that they've started out as disciplines and they've become habits, and now you want to make them practices because you've seen that these practices can be life-giving to your soul. For me, leaving Instagram and Facebook and not accessing email on my phone made a huge difference. It was huge. And I've noticed that I'm not as distracted anymore. I can think clearer. I can stay focused longer. And I can be present with people. That when I sit down to have lunch or have dinner with my family, that I don't need to have my phone on the table, that I can keep my phone in my bag or in my back pocket. Yes, I have a bag. It's an urban shoulder bag. It's not a purse, but I keep my phone in there now because I don't have to have it out. I can keep it put away. I still see and connect with people on social media, but it no longer dominates my life. So this week, I want you to ask God, what practices have I been doing? What things have I been doing that I can make habits that I can carry forward throughout this year? See, these are not new practices. These are ancient practices that followers of Jesus have been doing for 2,000 years. We started off this series looking at silence and solitude and what it means to have that time, that quiet time, that time in the eremos. And then last week we looked at Sabbath and what it's like to have a really healthy, sustainable work-life rhythm, to be able to keep peace and joy and delight in our work and in our rest. And so today, as we close out this series, what I want to do is I want to teach you a simple spiritual practice known as simplicity. Simplicity simply means to live on less. And I'll tell you that this message today is for me just as much as it is, and maybe even more than it is for anyone else. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't have this right yet. I'm a work in progress, but I'm working on it. And we started this series looking at this picture of this closet, right? This closet that just for a lot of people is very triggering. It's like, it's a dirty closet. It's all cluttered, right? And we said, maybe it's okay for your closet to look like this, but it's not okay for your family calendar to look like this. It's okay for your basement to look like this, but it's not okay for your schedule to look like this, right? It's not okay to be driving the kids around so much that you're basically Uber instead of dad. It's not okay to burn the candle at both ends at work. And it's not okay for your finances to look like this, where, you're just working and you're always buying one more thing and there's always one more thing you need and you'll pay for it later and then something comes up and everything just crashes down. For many of us, it's actual stuff that clutters our life. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to get things organized, and I've been pulling these containers of DVDs that are spread out all over the house, some in the living room, some in the dining room, and I put them all in a box, and I finally got that box down into the garage. I've got a box this big full of DVDs, and I don't even have a DVD player. It's crazy. And now I've got all these boxes in the garage, and now I've got to go get to that. Listen, I'm a work in progress. I don't have this right, but I'm working on it. And at some point, I believe that every follower of Jesus has to look around and just say, man, enough is enough. I really believe that today's message, if it sinks into you, it can be liberating. That we can live in the freedom that Jesus died to give us. One of the things we said was that the breathing room is the space between your current pace and your limits. Between how fast you're going, how deeply you're loving, how much you're spending, and what your limits are. The difference between those things is your breathing room. And when it comes to our stuff, our breathing room is the space between our income and how much we're spending. That's your financial breathing room. Financial breathing room means I'm going to spend less than what comes in. And when I do that, I'll have breathing room. I'll have more money than month rather than more month than money. Anyone ever been there? Where there's more month than money you've got? Right? Breathing room means you have money at the end of the month. You're not scrambling around to try to find money to keep you tided over for the next few days. Where you're not scrambling to make minimum payments on your credit cards just to keep the banks away from you. Right? But here's the problem. The culture that we live in today, the gospel of the American culture says, the more stuff you have, the happier you'll be. It's what the culture tells us. It says you'll be happier if you can just get that new dress. If you can just get that new pair of shoes. If you can just get that new golf club. If you can upgrade your laptop. If you can get one more potted succulent for that last bathroom in your house. If you could just get that one more thing, then you'll be happy. You know that we are exposed to about 6,000 to 10,000 different advertisements every single day, trying to convince you that your happiness is just one click away. I found out something fascinating this week. As Americans, we have so much stuff that we are literally running out of storage space. There is a storage unit shortage in our country. Because we can't fit everything in our house, we have to get storage space outside our house to fit all of our stuff. Self-storage is now a $54 billion industry. And it's expected to be up to $84 billion within the next 3 years. Currently in the United States, there is 2.3 billion square feet of storage space. That's amazing. There are more storage facilities. Now, get this, storage facilities, not storage units, but actually the facilities. There are more storage facilities in the United States than there are Starbucks. There are more storage facilities than there are McDonald's. In fact, if you take the number of Starbucks, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Dunkin' Donuts, and Wendy's, take the total number of those, there are still more storage facilities than that. Because as Americans, we rarely say, enough is enough. Usually what we say is more clothes, more toys, more electronics, more collectibles. And we all know it's a lie. We all know that more stuff doesn't equal more happiness. But what if in reality, more stuff actually equaled less happiness? More stuff means less time, less joy. More stuff actually meant less financial freedom. What if more stuff just meant more stress, less peace, more friction in your family? I mean, come on, we instinctively know this. If you're married, you know this. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a happy, peaceful marriage? Or would you rather have a crappy marriage, but a really cool house with lots of cool stuff in it? Right? Nobody wants that. Everybody would choose the happy marriage. Because yeah, you can have all the cool stuff in your house, you can have the cool cars and all of those things, but if there's no peace and harmony in your home, you won't have any peace. And when the bills come due and you can't pay for it, then all of that cool stuff has just brought you problems. There's no room for anything. There's no room for prayer. There's no room for real relationships. I think we all know, we've all seen, maybe in our lives, maybe in the lives of people that we know, that money doesn't equal happiness. In fact, money can quickly ramp up the stress and the tension in our relationships. You know, Jesus actually tells a story in the scriptures about storage units. It's kind of funny. It's recorded in the book of Luke, and this is how it goes like this. It says, then this is Jesus told them a story. He says, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. So Jesus was saying there was this farmer, and he had a bumper crop for the season. Like, he just had a huge harvest. And his problem was he doesn't have enough room to store it all. His closet is full, his basement is full, it's full of boxes of things that he's never used and probably never will use, and they're just stacked into the garage. I'm telling you, this is my garage, right? My garage is stacked with stuff. Most of it, I couldn't really even tell you. There's like a lot of clothes there that I'm still hoping one day will fit, probably won't ever fit, but they've been stored there. A bunch of stuff. Look, I'm a work in progress, right? I'm working on it. So just like the farmer. So when the farmer, he gets this great idea, right? He's run out of places to store his stuff, so he gets this great idea. Listen to what he says. He says, then he said, this is the farmer, he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. The farmer is one of us, right? It never occurs to him that he just might have too much stuff. No, instead, he wants to build a bigger barn. He wants to add on to the back of the house. He wants to rent another storage unit, whatever it takes to fit all of it. And then listen to what he says. He says, and I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. I mean, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? I'll just store it all up. It'll be safe. And now it's Miller time. And then he thinks to himself, okay, I've got it all now, right? I can stop. I have it all. House, check. Cars, check. 401k, check. Timeshare in Tahoe, check. Now we can eat, drink, and be merry. And just like every book, movie, TV show you've ever watched, where the star of the show has everything going great for him, we know what's coming next. In the next verse it says, but God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Right? Jesus is giving him a reality check. He says, you've spent your whole life hoarding all of this stuff for yourself, but tonight you're going to meet God face to face, and all of your stuff is going to end up in a landfill somewhere. Jesus says, yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. In other words, Jesus is saying that there is a direct connection between our stuff and our spirituality, between the things that we buy and consume and our relationship with Jesus. That we have more stuff, we have less peace. We have more clutter, we have less joy. But if we have Less stuff, there's less anxiety. Less clutter, there's less stress, right? But we have to come to the point where we can say, enough is enough. I have enough. I have enough clothes to wear. I have a roof over my head. I have simple food to eat. I have enough. I don't actually need more to be happy because I've already been blessed with what God has given me. In fact, I actually feel content. Now, content is not a word that our culture likes, but it's a powerful concept. The Apostle Paul actually wrote about this. He wrote a letter to one of his, a young man that he was mentoring, a young man named Timothy, and he was giving Timothy advice on how to follow Jesus well, and he talked a lot about contentment. And listen to what Paul writes. He says, "Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content." In other words, Paul is saying, look, if I've got warm clothes and a hot meal, I'm good, right? I came into this world with nothing. I'm leaving without anything. And Paul is saying, listen, if you are a follower of Jesus, at some point you have to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough. I'm good with what I've got. I don't need one more pair of shoes. I don't need another toy for my garage, another lens for my camera, another stamp for my passport. I'm good. I have enough. In fact, Paul says, if you have Jesus, you have enough. That if it's all stripped away, and it will be someday, that when we leave the world the same way that we came into it, Jesus will still be enough. Because Jesus will always be there, and so I'm good. I can be content. My soul can be satisfied. I'm going to embrace simplicity. Simplicity, people in our culture, it's what we call in our culture today minimalism. In fact, you can go onto YouTube and you can search for TED Talks on minimalism, and you'll find a bunch of them there. Now, let me tell you what simplicity is not. Simplicity is not a vow of poverty, right? It doesn't mean you have to go out and sell all your stuff, cancel all your vacation plans, go to IKEA and just get all white, simple furniture and shave your head and wear robes all day. Simplicity doesn't mean that you shouldn't have aspirations, that you shouldn't try to be successful, that you shouldn't work hard at your job. Simplicity is simply calling out the toxic lie of materialism that says, I will be happy when I get this. If I could just get my hands on this, then I would really be happy. To instead say, I'm going to intentionally learn to live on less. That I'm going to say, yes, enough is enough. That I'm going to be better than happy. I'm actually going to be content. Right? Simplicity is saying, I'm going to make space, make room in my life for the most important things. And the most important things aren't even things, they're people, they're relationships. Relationships with your spouse, relationships with your family, relationships with your friends. And most importantly, relationship with your Heavenly Father. That's the most important thing. It's hard because contentment is countercultural. Contentment doesn't come from what you own. Contentment comes from who owns you. You are a loved and treasured child of God. And you've got everything you need. You've got your sins forgiven, a purpose for living, a home in heaven. What else is there that you need? And when you think about that, your soul can actually be content. And I think it's, on a very basic level, isn't that what we all want? A simpler life where we're not compulsively shopping, trying to make ourselves feel better. We're drowning in debt, struggling to pay our credit cards. Now listen, I know for some people this is a hard topic, right? But this is a no judgment zone. Don't ever feel condemned or shamed. That is not my purpose. I'm not talking about this because I want you to feel bad. Listen, I have been through this. I've lived this. I know what this is like. A lot of us who are here, a lot of you who are out there, you know what this is like. I'm not talking about this to make you feel bad. I'm talking about this to help you live better. And so if you want to know how to do this, I'm going to put this chart up. And the chart here, you can see two lines. The line going up is money, and then the line going across is time. Now, over the course of your life, hopefully, your income will look like this, where it's going up and to the right. Not always, but generally. It's usually not a straight line. It goes up and down, right? There's usually some ups and some downs, but generally, unless you own your own business where you might get a lot of fluctuation, it goes up and down. It goes generally in that direction, up and to the right. Now, if you want to have breathing room, your spending would look like this, right? Your spending would be below your income. Where you say to yourself, I'm not going to rent more space. I'm not going to build a bigger barn. I'm going to actually live with less. Your income goes up, but your spending stays below. And in between that is this little thing called breathing room. Now, wouldn't that be awesome if that was you? That you'd feel lighter? That you could look at how much we made and then how much we spent and how much was left over, how much we were able to save? Think of all of the things that you could do if you had breathing room in your life. You might be able to pay for college. You might be able to take that vacation that you've always talked about. But even better, you would have breathing room. You know what's so great about breathing room? Breathing room actually cuts your problems in half. I just had the tires changed on the car and now the brakes are squeaking, right? So I need new brakes. I know I need new brakes. Now, if you have breathing room, you have a car problem. But if you don't have breathing room, you have a car problem and a money problem. When you have breathing room, it cuts your problems in half. Or if someone gets sick, or if you get your hours cut at work, right? Life can be stressful, but you're not stressed because you have breathing room. You can handle it. And isn't that what we all want? And it's what God wants for you too. You know why? Because when you have breathing room, you don't fight with your spouse over money. You don't lose sleep worrying about how you're going to pay that bill. You become relationally rich with God because you have more time. You become more generous towards other people. You make the decision to choose being content. That's what simplicity is. And listen, if you want to raise your quality of life, you've got to lower your standard of living. You raise your quality of life by lowering your standard of living. That's God's plan for you and for me. But here in our culture, this is where most Americans are living. If you're the average American, you're living right here, right? Where income and spending is right next to each other, right? You make $50,000 and you spend right up to the line. $49,999.98 goes out every month. Whatever it is you make. 50, 75, 100, 200,000, it doesn't matter. In fact, here's the funny thing. Do you know that the more money you make, the more pressure you feel? And this is probably surprising to a lot of you because a lot of you are thinking, well, I make $50,000 a year now. But if I just had more income, the pressure would go away. And look, I've talked to people at all different income levels, all different income levels. And here's the one thing that I've seen over and over again. No matter where you are, even if you make $250,000 a year, if your spending keeps pace with your income, you still feel financial pressure. You still feel it. And maybe you've even thought, man, I see all these rich people that make, $200,000, $300,000 a year. If I made $300,000 a year, man, I would be balling. I would be so chill. I would be spreading it around to everybody. I'd be living the life. But if you talk to people who are making $300,000 a year and who spend right up to the line just like you do, guess what? They feel the exact same pressure that you do. In fact, for them, it's probably even worse. Look, you lose a $50,000 a year job, you could probably find another one. But you lose a $300,000 a year job, well, those are much harder to come by. And so the pressure increases. The more you make, the more you spend, the more your income, the more your pressure multiplies. And there are people who would tell you that I'm making more than I've ever made right now, but I have no peace in my home. I have no peace in my marriage. And then there's those of us who live like this. For me, this was me back in my 20s, right? This was me, where the spending is way above the income. Now look, yeah, sometimes we get into financial problems because we lose our job or we have unusual medical issues that come up, things we can't foresee or avoid. Yeah, that happens. But let's be honest with each other. Most people get into financial problems because they see something that looks shiny and new and they just got to have it. But it causes friction. It causes friction in our marriage. It causes friction in our home. We start looking at each other and say, you can't buy this. Why did you buy that? And all of a sudden there's all this stress because life is just upside down. But listen, I want you to hear this. There is hope. There's always hope. It's never too late. Look, right after Paul says that there's godliness with content, that godliness with contentment is great wealth, he gives a warning. Listen to what he says. He says, but people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. In other words, when you buy stuff you don't need with money you don't have, you've fallen into an age-old trap. And maybe you've experienced this, right? You're driving around in your brand new car, and you should feel good, but you're wondering what in the world ever came over you to pay this much for a car. Or maybe you got into a new place or you're renting or buying and the rent or the mortgage payment is just more than you can afford, just a little more than you can afford. And you thought, no, I can make it work. But now you're upside down. And instead that house feels like a noose around your neck. Look, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. There's no condemnation here. I have been there before. I know what it's like. But this is just how the world works. It's a spiritual principle. Listen, Paul says, for the love of money, not money, but the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Many sorrows. They've pierced themselves. Sorrows is just sadness. You feel sad. Because you wake up one day with a closet full of clothes and you pull stuff out and you said, man, this used to be so cool. And now, or like most ladies in America today, you open your overflowing closet and you're like, I don't have anything to wear. And yet most people in the world would look at your closet and say, can I just have one of those things? I mean, that's all I need. And I would wear that thing every day. You know what the scriptures say about people who are chronically in debt? It says that they're slaves. Proverbs says that the borrower is a slave to the lender. You're a slave because you no longer have the last say about what happens in your life. It's now the banks and the credit cards. It's now Wells Fargo and Bank of America are now in charge of your life. People you don't know are calling the shots with your time, your money, your freedom. You can't take time off. You can't fund your dreams. You can't follow God's call on your life. Right? If he says go here, you can't. If he says do that, you can't. Because you don't have any breathing room. And for a follower of Jesus, listen, this is not a financial issue. This is a spiritual issue. Because here's the truth. You can't live in the freedom that Jesus died to give you when you're a slave to runaway spending. And ultimately what it takes for you to get is to just get good and angry and say, enough is enough. I've reached the limit. I want breathing room. Now, I know this is getting a bit hard. Listen, I've been there. God wanted more for me. God wants more for you. And he's not here to give you condemnation today. Instead, he wants you to have contentment. He says contentment in your life is great wealth. Because suddenly, you can be relationally rich with other people. You can be generous with your time, generous with your money, generous with your stuff. Your mind can relax, so your body can relax, and your soul can finally rest. Now, if you're thinking, Pastor, I want that. I want to experience that. I'm going to give you 4 steps to help you practice simplicity, to develop that spiritual muscle of simplicity in your life. All right, here they are, the 4 steps. First, you've got to decide to live on less. If you want to raise the quality of life, your quality of life, you've got to lower your standard of living. And I know this is hard because this is the direct opposite of what culture teaches you. And living on less takes discipline. Look, you can raise your standard of living with debt. A lot of people do it. But the only way to raise your quality of life is discipline. You've got to take hold of it. You've got to take responsibility for it. You have to say, I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm not going to blame the economy. I'm not going to blame politics. I'm not going to blame my boss. My 2023 is going to be different because I'm going to make the decisions. And yeah, I've made some mistakes, but I have decided to do this, and I know that there's grace. There's grace for my mistakes, and there's forgiveness. And you have to make the decision to do whatever it takes to get some breathing room. So make the decision to live on less. The second thing is track your spending. Make this the year that you actually finally figure out where your money is going instead of wondering where it went. Right? A lot of people will say, man, I have an income problem. As fast as it comes in, it goes out. And for most people don't know what percentage of their income they actually live on. A lot of people don't want to know because, ignorance is bliss. So what I would recommend is you download a money management app. There's lots of good ones out there. There's Mint, which is by the people at Intuit. There's Rocket Money. But the one I recommend is Every Dollar by Dave Ramsey. And all of these apps, whichever one you choose, they're all free. But they're very useful in helping you track your spending, helping you come up with a simple budget and following it. And I've actually seen dozens of families get out of debt through Financial Peace University, which we hope to offer again. I think this will be the 4th time that we've offered it this spring. But you have to intentionally decide what percentage of your income you want to live on. How much breathing room do you want to have? 5%? 10%? Do you want to live on 80 and keep 20? Look, debt comes naturally. But breathing room, discipline, it takes tools. So use the tools that are available to you. The third thing is you've got to unclutter your life. Now, I know minimalism today, it's just a buzzword, right? Simplicity is simply saying, I'm going to unclutter my life. I'm going to unclutter my finances. I'm going to unclutter all of my stuff. Just ask God to tell you, what is it that you need? What do I really need? Because when you think about what you really need, it's probably less clothes, less tech, less stuff. What you really need is more joy, more peace, more prayer, more breathing room, more freedom, more time, more loving relationships, more connection with Jesus. Now, I'm going to talk about 3 baby steps. This is a subset of this, right? 3 baby steps to unclutter your life. First, never impulse buy. The English designer William Morris says, have nothing in your house that you do not believe to be useful or beautiful. And we tend to just buy things, usually tiny things, and keep them. Just we don't want to let them go because we never know when we're going to go there again, right? I have a collection of Starbucks mugs from every city that I've been to. And a couple of cities that I've never been to, but the kids have been to, right? Do we really need to have all those mugs? They're all exactly the same size. Do we need to have all of them, right? Have nothing in your house that you do not believe to be useful or beautiful. So never impulse buy. Ask, do I really need this? Let me tell you something. It is an amazing feeling to want something, know you can buy it, and then not buy it. Make the decision to not buy it. So, rule of thumb, the bigger the item is, the longer you wait to buy it. Ask God, do I really need this? He'll tell you. He'll let you know. And then finally, learn to enjoy things without owning them. You love books like I love books? You don't have to buy every book you want on Amazon. There is this place in your town right now where they have tons and tons of books, and you can read all of them for absolutely free. That's right, a library. You don't have to buy the book. You can just keep the book. In fact, you can keep the book as long as you want. Well, not as long as you want, but you can keep checking it out over and over again, right? You can't afford a gym membership. You don't need a gym membership. This is what you do. Open your front door, and then you start by putting your left foot first, and then your right foot, and go faster and faster, right? Just go outside and take a walk. You need a pressure washer? Ask your neighbor who has a pressure washer. Offer to pay for the gas, or to clean it, or to service it, right? You know that today we live in a sharing economy, right? You share your car on Uber, you share your house on Vrbo. Did you know that the book of Acts tells us that the first Christians, the early Christians, actually started the sharing economy? That they were so set free by Jesus from the grip of materialism on their lives that they shared everything. They shared their possessions, their homes, their property. There was an early church father who described the Christians, and this was back in a time when Christians were still called a cult. And listen to what he writes. He says, "One in mind and soul, we, Christians, do not hesitate to share our earthly goods with one another. All things are common among us, but our wives." They were liberal with their stuff, but not with their morals. That's what Christian simplicity is. Less stuff, more sharing, more peace, more generosity, more freedom. You don't feel bad when you see other people's lives on Instagram, right? You're content. Another great resource, I'm a member of my local Buy Nothing. It's a Facebook group. So there are Facebook groups all over, actually all over the country. So no matter where you are, there's probably a Buy Nothing in your area. It's a great place for you to unload your clutter and be good stewards of the environment, not just letting it go into a landfill. You know what they say, that one man's trash is another man's treasure? And so there's stuff that I've gotten that I've needed. I didn't have to buy because they were offered on Buy Nothing. And there's stuff that I've gotten rid of and that other people needed by putting it on Buy Nothing. In fact, my local Buy Nothing has a lending library where people have said, I've got this thing and I want to make it available for people so you don't have to buy it. You don't need a leaf blower. Just go to the lending library and somebody has one there that they will let you borrow. Our lending library is huge. I'm going to put a link in the comments to my local Buy Nothing, and then you can find a Buy Nothing where you are. But it's a great resource. And then finally, number 4, pursue contentment. Not happiness. See, pursuing happiness, that's the American dream, right? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. See, happiness is temporary. Contentment is eternal. Now tomorrow, a lot of my friends, if you're here in the Bay Area, maybe some of you who aren't in the Bay Area, but tomorrow I'm going to be watching my Niners, baby. This is it. This is the season. And while you're watching that game, you're going to be flooded with hundreds of ads trying to convince you that if you just lived here, if you drove this, if you ate that, if you vacationed here, you would finally be happy. But happiness is temporary. Contentment is eternal. Look what Paul wrote to the Hebrews. He said, "Don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you." See, you and I, we can be content with what we have because no matter what, God will never leave us. God is saying, look, you're always going to have me. And listen, if you have God, you have all you need. You have enough. Jesus paid the price. And you have all you need. A purpose for living. Your sins are forgiven. A home in heaven. And he says, I'll never abandon you. I'll never fail you. I'll never let you down. And so as we get to the end of this month, this first month of the year, it's a perfect week to make some changes. To start off 2023 by simplifying your life, by living it out in your life, in your schedule, in your family, in your finances. To take the steps to get some breathing room in your life. Because I truly believe that if you do that, you'll reach the end of this year, you'll reach the end of this decade, and you'll look back and you will say, January, that was the month. That was the month when I decided I was going to make 2023 different. And now my 2023, in fact, this entire decade is different because of that decision I made. That I now have a completely new life, a new way of living, because I said, I am going to follow Jesus' way of living. I just want to invite you to that. Go back and watch the previous messages. I want to invite you to a life of breathing room, of finding that space, of keeping where you are much farther away from your limits so that you can breathe and so you can rest and so you can be free. Listen, I truly believe, and I've seen this in my life, I've seen this in the lives of many people, that once you make that decision to get breathing room in your life, it will not only transform your life, but it can transform your family, and it will transform your future.
Thank you for joining us for this week's message. Gracepoint Church is located in South San Francisco, California. For additional content or to find out more information about Gracepoint Church, visit us online at wearegracepoint.com.